Hey, drawing and sketching students, how are you? Today we're going to talk about landscapes or seascapes like the ones behind me. Um, I want to talk to you about some master landscape artists, some folks that have made a name for themselves over the years for painting and drawing landscapes. We're going to look at some art careers where you could actually get paid if you enjoy drawing or painting landscapes. I'm going to look at some student examples and see what has been done, what can be done, what different media you can use, like pencil or colored pencil or markers or crayons or pastels. So it kind of just, I want to get you guys jazzed about this project. All right, so today is just an overview of everything we're about to do. So buckle up, here we go. First, make sure that you have reviewed the illusions of space. Make sure you have that in your notes. We're not going to get too far or learn about how to draw landscapes unless you've got a basic understanding of how to create space and depth. All of these are going to come into play, maybe not linear perspective, but the rest will for sure. Next time I see you, we are going to learn how to draw these kind of things: clouds, grass, rocks, trees, hills, mountains, water, anything that's some element that you might see outside. We're going to try to tackle so that you're in good shape when we finally do either go outside or work from some photos to draw your own landscapes. So make sure you've got your sketchbook and your pencil handy next time I see you for our next class, because I'm going to show you all my best tips and tricks for how to draw all kinds of landscape features. But let's get into it and talk about this fella for a second. Of course, you've heard of Leonardo da Vinci. If you haven't, we should know he's the guy that painted the Mona Lisa, the Last Supper. Most people might not know that he was an inventor. He created things, some which came to fruition, some which didn't, but things like robots, helicopters, scuba diving gear that you could use underwater, tanks. The guy was just super duper smart. Yes, he was a painter and a sculptor, a mathematician, a scientist. After all that, he also painted and drew landscapes. He was just like Curious George of the Renaissance, right? So about the time Columbus sailed over here, this guy was going outside, and here you can see he's using all the illusions of space. There's even linear perspective, there's size and placement and overlapping and shading. And he kind of just always wanted to understand how nature worked. How do birds fly? How does water flow? How do rocks fracture regularly and why? Just a really inquisitive mind. So I hope that you adopt some of his curious spirit when you're drawing, like really study things and look at, how does the bark on that tree work? Why is it arranged the way it is? I try to think like him myself. Probably more famous as a landscape painter only is Claude Monet. I hope you've heard of Monet at some point in time. This guy actually lost his sight when he was later in life. I just can't imagine as a painter, going blind, not being able to paint on canvases. But he was obviously the main or leading guy in the Impressionist movement. So his works are very loose. In other words, you're not going to see every little detail, and it's not going to be perfect. He's trying to paint as quick as he can. He's working outside, and rumor has it he would take his paintbrush or palette knife and hold it right up next to the sky until he got it just the same color. Or mix up some paint and hold it right up next to the leaves until he got just the right color. And by doing that, he really captured the exact colors, the exact atmospheric conditions and time of day. When you look at one of his works, you can kind of tell, maybe I look at this one and I think, well, it's probably early evening, sun's going down. He just really was interested in capturing that light. The colors he used, just amazing. And I love his work because it takes you back to a time and place where he was. He obviously stood in this valley where these looks like poppies are, and painted that. That was his work day. I mean, I just think they're beautiful. Another thing he used to do often is take more than one canvas with him. He'd go out into the field and take maybe 3 or 4 canvases, and he might paint on, say, this canvas up here from 8 till 9 in the morning. And then, of course, the sun's moving in the sky, and the shadows are getting shorter or longer depending on the time of day. And the colors, surprisingly, the colors change. So he found he couldn't work on the same canvas for too long. Otherwise, he would just have to keep fixing and changing it. But he could come back the next day, and if the atmospheric conditions were the same, the weather is the same, he could revisit this one from 8 to 9 in the morning and continue to work on it. So he did. He would revisit the same scene over and over, which might seem kind of boring to some people. By the way, this is like hay. This is how they, amass hay in southern France, whereas we make it into bales or cylinders. I know some people think it looks like little huts or houses, but no, it's just piles of hay. But he really, took joy in the fact that just depending on the season, the time of day, where the light was, that you could take the same subject and make it so many different ways. So anyway, his interest was light. Um, Peter Bruegel, this guy lived in the 1600s. You can tell he's been around for a while because look at his paintbrush. It's a stick with some hair tied to it. I go to Michael's or Joann's and just buy a whole bunch of paintbrushes ready made. But he was one who was more of an academic painter. By academic, I mean he didn't go outside like Monet and just paint as fast as he could for an hour or two. He would do this all in his studio. This would all be planned out and drawn out. Might go outside to do some sketches, but this would take months to do. This would be a large painting. And the composition's all pre-planned. I mean, he's got the hunters and the dogs here in the foreground, and he uses visual movement to move your eye around the scene. Watch this. If you follow my cursor here, this line will lead you down into the town, and then you can't help but go out this way, following the people as they get smaller and smaller. There's some diagonals that send you that way. And then he uses even other lines here to force you back further in space to these birds. And if you follow those birds up here, these trees will bring your view back down. So it's a very, what we call circular composition. And it's going to force you to look around the entire scene. And there's really nothing in the middle. Think about your rule of thirds. He's got action over here and action up here and the mountaintop up here and people down here. So he's using all four of those, hot spots we talked about, the ideal place to put your emphasis. It's just an academic, perfectly planned type of painting. A lot of people don't paint like that anymore. Here's another one. Again, in this other ideal hot spot, he's got his foreground, and that will lead you back here to this fella, also in an ideal emphasis area. And then it winds you around through visual movement to the horizon. He's using, again, the rule of thirds. It's 1/3 the way down, and then back over here to the tree and back down. So it's, again, just perfectly planned out. This guy was a landscape painter. Yes, he painted sunflowers and vases and portraits of people. But, I mean, obviously his most famous landscape was a nighttime landscape, Starry Night. What I love about his work is his expressive use of color. That's what really made him different. He was a post-impressionist, like after the Impressionists. So he wasn't trying like Monet to get the exact color. He was taking liberty with the colors he used. This field of, I don't know what it is, but it's just not green. It's like purple and light blue and lavender and light yellow green, and there's reds and browns and oranges and every color imaginable. He's using color to make it really seem more exciting. And boy, the way he laid on his paint, it's actually in Italian, they call it impasto, because it was like paste, impasto. So imagine painting with toothpaste or something that thick. That's what he did. But the colors he used, I mean, there's every shade of green in here. You got your yellow greens and light greens, dark greens, mint greens. I just think they're beautiful. And then there's this guy. Yeah, he's got much better hair than me. This guy made a name for himself through the 80s, maybe into the 90s, for painting for half an hour on PBS. He always landscapes. I have to imagine he did paint some portraits or still lives now and then, but on a show, it was all landscapes, stuff like this. And again, you can see that he's thinking about emphasis, not in the very middle. There's not much going on there, but he understands composition, but he's painting this in a half an hour. A lot of art historians or real artists, they look down their nose at him and they give him a bad name because, I mean, let's be honest. Can you paint a masterpiece in a half an hour? No. But is it impressive that he can do this in a half an hour? Yes. That's what's impressive. That he's got the right tools and that he can just make everything look pretty darn good, especially from a few feet away. Upon close inspection, they're a little rough. But anyway, super talented. There are jobs out there. If you like doing this after you get done with this unit, you don't have to think, well, I did that for Mr. Linderman. Well, no, try your best because you can make money. One thing you could do is jobs like a landscape architect. My brother did this, went to Michigan State. I remember him showing me books like this where he learned how to draw trees, and everyone does it like in the same way, so it's uniform in style, like an architect. Um, but he would get jobs that other people couldn't get because he would show up with a drawing like this, whereas someone else might say, I'm thinking I'm going to drop a couple trees in over there, a couple big rocks. Like he would draw it and give the customer the vision, and they would say, oh yeah, you're hired. Here, how much money is it, you know? So anyway, a great job. Not as in demand, but golf course design is another. You have to imagine there's not golf courses popping up every day, but I do know that this pays very well. Of course, you could be a fine artist. These things sell. If you've ever been to an art fair, you're going to see folks selling these. They end up in hospitals and office buildings and homes, and they're pleasing, right? There's nothing too testy about a landscape scene, so they're beautiful. You could be a muralist, and that's like someone who paints murals on walls. Here's some examples from the Rainforest Cafe restaurant, but it might be a wealthy client who wants their children's room done. Yes, these are dinosaurs, but this person knows how to draw rocks and grass and trees and bushes and clouds. And so if you can, just learn some of those techniques, it can just open your horizons to what you might be able to do in the future. And one you might not even think about, a zoologist or a zoo artist. You have to create backgrounds or believable environments for these, say, penguins or gorillas or polar bears, or in natural history museums where you've got snakes and reptiles. There's generally art in the background that, kind of makes that scene seem realistic. There's artists that do that and they get paid well. So just a thought. All right. So what we're focusing on for you guys when you do your landscapes are these 5 things. Obviously, we want to try to create the sense of space and depth, right? Texture. I mean, you need to make the tree look like it's got leaves and bark and there's grass and the clouds are fluffy. So texture will be important. And form. If you're drawing a pine tree, it shouldn't look like, a triangle with a rectangle underneath. It should look like a cone on top of a cylinder. So I'm going to show you how to shade things to make it look more 3-dimensional to create that form. Emphasis is going to be one of the principles I want you guys to work with. Not putting whatever the coolest thing is in your photo or whatever you're looking at. Say it's a tree right in the middle of your scene. No, move it into one of those hot spots off center and make your emphasis emphasized. And then unity. If you can, this is difficult, but if you can make all the colors, lines, shapes, textures, everything, the space all work together and it looks like it's one family, that would be awesome. So here are the 4 things I'm going to ask you guys to do. These are the project goals, okay? This is what I'm grading you on. This is what goes through my bald head as I'm looking at your artwork when it's done. So first of all, choose a composition that has both land and sky, okay? Something like this. If it's a beautiful day out and there's an amazing sky with cool clouds, move your horizon down, maybe to the 1/3 area, 1/3 the way up or down. If you go outside and the sky is just blue, it's kind of boring, maybe you move your horizon up so it's 1/3 from the top. Then you'll have a lot more land features to draw. But you have to have land and sky. Don't look down at your feet and draw a little ladybug on a blade of grass, and don't lay on your back and draw a cloud study. Make sure you have a horizon. Number 2, I want you to try to use all of these illusions of space. Linear perspective, you don't have to. In fact, stay away from the man-made stuff, the fences and the basketball courts and the driveways and the roads. Just look at nature if you can. Or if those enter your scene, try to just leave them out. I do want to see at least 3 different textures, which naturally is going to happen. But, if you've got clouds, make them look fluffy. If you've got leaves or bark, make it look leafy and barky. Grass, water, hills, whatever it is, try to make it feel like you could feel it, like it's got a texture. And lastly, that idea of emphasis. Nothing in the middle, move it off to the side. It's going to make a more interesting composition where you have juxtaposition, okay? So here's some student examples. Take a quick look. One media you could use is pencil. So when I say media, I'm not talking about the news or magazines. I'm talking about art media. You all have pencils. So here are some student examples. I have to believe some of these folks either created these out of their mind or they found pictures on the web. Other people might have sat outside, found a cool location, which is what I would recommend you do. I love drawing outside. It's peaceful. But pencil is one way to go. So you'll see a number of different answers and different styles here. This one's kind of nice, like the composition there. By the way, you can go vertical, you can go horizontal, and this will all be done in your sketchbook. I'll be asking you to draw 3 of these so that you practice. I mean, doing one, it might work, it might not work. By the time you do your 3rd one, you'll be better and you'll realize what works and what doesn't. Colored pencil is another way to go. I'll be giving you colored pencils this week, or maybe you already have some, so you can get some color involved. Actually, I kind of like this one, how all the lines are traveling the same direction. It might seem difficult to do, but it's just a technique that gives it unity. All the lines are going the same direction. Here's another, and another. This probably isn't from Michigan, unless it was way up north, maybe in the UP. We don't have big mountains around here. That one's pretty beautiful. Now, you might have other art supplies or art media at home, like crayons or markers. Here's one that's a combination of crayon and marker, as well as this one. So you could do a mixed media piece. It could be crayon, marker, and colored pencil. So that's entirely up to you. But at all times, think about emphasis, think about texture, your illusions of space. Lastly, if you have pastels, this is generally what we use in class, but they're super expensive. And if I had to buy 175 sets, that would be thousands of dollars. So unfortunately, you won't be using those unless you have some. Or if you want to go to Michael's or Joann's or Hobby Lobby and pick up a set, it probably costs you about 20 bucks. But the beauty of these is you can really blend and smear and smudge and layer. And a lot of landscape artists prefer to use pastels. The colors stay rich and vibrant forever. They're quick, so you can fill a whole sky like in a minute because they blend so easily. So these are all examples of using pastels. That's one of my preferred landscape media. And if you can, don't forget this illusion of space, that things in the distance are usually lighter or a little more blurry. So things up close, you can see all that detail. In the distance, not so much. That's the one illusion of space a lot of folks forget to do. So anyway, this is just a warm up. I want to give you the big picture of what we're about to do. But next time I see you, have your sketchbooks and pencils, and we will learn how to draw landscapes. Have a good day.